Coming up on the W Show, we're down to 4 with 2 cracking preliminary finals to preview, with Brisbane, Geelong, North Melbourne and Adelaide still in the hunt. Plus, just what went wrong with the reigning premiers and when did Melbourne's form slump really begin? We take a look. And 2022 League Best and Fairest, Em Bates joins us on the couch a week on from her coach Bec Goddard's retirement. You're watching The W Show, thanks to NAB. Yes, a very warm welcome to The W Show, thanks to NAB. Sarah Ollie in the host chair and back as she is every week, award-winning journalist Sarah Black. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. We thought the first week of finals was good, and then the second week said, let's go even better.
It continues to deliver, as do our guests. Em Bates, Hawks Gun, League Best and Fairest from season 2022. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be back.
We are down to the final 4. It is exciting time. So let's project forward to preliminary finals weekend because it is kicking off at Brighton Homes Arena. The Lions taking on the Cats on Saturday. And then it's the Roos and Crows at Icon Park on Sunday, set for 2 crackers. And of course, one of the unique aspects to AFLW is that there's no fixed venue for the grand final. In fact, it's a floating venue and North Melbourne are in the box seat to host it. Just explain why that is.
Yeah, so this was to do with where teams finished, not just after the home and away season, but also taking into account those qualifying final upset losses. So what it boils down to is if North Melbourne win, they will host regardless of their opponent. If it's a Brisbane-Adelaide grand final, it's going to be at Brighton Homes Arena. And if it's an Adelaide-Geelong grand final, we're at Norwood Oval.
So many permutations and so much to look forward to this weekend. Before we get stuck into it, though, Em, a massive week for your Hawks. Bec Goddard, the inaugural coach of your club, announcing her retirement. How did Bec deliver the news? How did it all shake out?
Yeah, it was massive news for the group. So we just found out just a little bit before the public did on the Friday. So we had a team meeting and she just expressed to the group that she was, I guess, ready to retire from coaching. So we'll obviously miss her dearly. She's such a big personality in football and has done so much for AFLW and is such a big advocate for women and especially women in coaching. So we'll certainly miss her. Love my first season under Bec, but wish her all the best.
Things move on pretty quickly in football. So I guess the starting question is, where do you think this team is at? Because then that'll influence the type of coach that's needed.
Yeah, I think we've certainly set the foundations for ourselves, and now you look at teams like Sydney and what they were able to do this year. That's really where we're trying to springboard off. You can see they had a really clear game plan. They're all on the same page. So protect a coach with a lot of background in more technical and tactical stuff is I think where we want to go next. But it's a really exciting time for the club.
Yeah, so of course when a coach comes in as an inaugural coach, as Bec does, it's about setting foundations and relationships. But I guess Hawthorn now, they're entering a new era and perhaps someone with maybe more of a strategic mind. Em, is that what you're thinking?
Potentially. I think the club's going to do a really thorough process in finding the next coach, which is really exciting. They're taking a lot of feedback from players, involving a lot of staff members in the program to find out exactly what we need and what the group wants. They'll be going from there. But it is an exciting time. I can't wait to see who we get.
Will you personally be involved?
I think so. I hope so. Fingers crossed.
There's sort of a bit of a gap, a pause there. Have you got your list? Not necessarily your list of preferred coaches, but your list of criteria of what you are keen for.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely a coach with a more tactical now. So as we're seeing in AFLW now, there's so much more tactic into the games. I think early on it was, teams that were just had great fitness levels or great pressure, and you could have lapses in quarters and still win. But now, we're getting to a stage in AFLW. You need to put together 4-quarter performances. You need to be able to adapt in game. So a coach that can certainly bring that, but also you still need a coach that's great at relationships, because I think that's the forefront of every great coach.
And of course, Bec Goddard, the inaugural premiership coach in 2017 with the Crows. But the Hawks, they're not the only club on the look for a new coach. The coaching merry-go-round, it's in full swing, isn't it?
Yes, we went through a phase there where every single Wednesday there was an announcement of a new coach change. So 4 clubs now looking for coaches, all in different positions in terms of where they are with list builds and maturation of their lists. So, you know, we spoke about this last week on the W show as well, about some of the people who could be in the running. I think keep your eye on Trent Cooper. He's open to a move east if it's the right job. He does have a young family, so things have to be right for that to occur. But the former Dockers coach could be in for a chance.
Now, Em, your season ended a few weeks ago, but you've been a busy lady, and of course part of the pitch to get you down to Hawthorn was your involvement at the football club, and we've seen that in recent weeks at the draft combine and at draft night this week. Talk to us about your involvement.
Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate. I've been working with the recruiting and list management team since about June. So there's some footage of me there scouting. But also was able to head to the draft the last couple of nights, which is an awesome experience as well. But just, yeah, doing a lot of vision, going to a lot of Coates Talent League games, and then putting together player profiles to then actually see these boys get drafted the last couple of nights. It was pretty special.
Take us into the draft room, because we've never been in there, Seb,
No.
and I'm sure there's lots of conversations. The phone's running hot. Of course, men's also has live trading. You know, was there anything that caught you by surprise in there at how things were handled?
I think ours was pretty straightforward this year, so it wasn't an easier draft for our team. But I think when all the live trades come through, it's pretty exciting. And hearing, you know, the boys on the phone, yes, no, and then, yeah, just the teamwork they have to get it done. Also in that 5-minute period, it's pretty stressful, but it's exciting to be part of.
Nat Edwards sometimes sits in this chair. We tend to alternate, and she's a massive hawk, as you know, and she was very happy to see Nick the Wizard Watson selected at pick 5. You've interviewed him. What was that process like? It
was awesome to meet him. Obviously, he's got such a big name for himself already, the Wizard. But he's a great character. He's going to be a perfect fit for the club. He has that bit of spunk about him, which is exciting. And I can tell he's going to be a cult hero at Hawthorn for many years to come. So Hawks fans should be very excited.
And of course, the AFLW draft is coming up on December 18, and you know where to go. AFLW's website for all the coverage. But let's get into the weekend results. We had 2 big semi-finals, but let's begin at Icon Park, Sarah, because this was an instant classic. It went down to the final minutes. The Cats in the end 5-point victors, and they really set the tone early, and Amy McDonald with the opening 2 goals got the party started.
Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't late to sitting down on the couch for this one, because it kicked off in a hurry for the Cats. Amy McDonald's never kicked 2 goals in a game before, but to do 2 in a row to start the final scoring, I think the warning signs were there early for Melbourne. You know, Amy's a super talented player, but she's a midfielder. She was starting at the centre bounce. What was she doing up forward twice? I think that was pretty concerning for Melbourne, that they let that happen 2 times in a row, and from there it was just an onslaught for the first 3 quarters.
So they're 30 points down, the reigning premiers, the Dees, at 3-quarter time. You're thinking, well, this is going to be a pretty one-sided affair in the last quarter. But they kick the final 5 goals. We actually almost go to extra time, and we're just going to run the last 60 seconds of the game just to give you a picture of how frenetic it was. So there's the Cats, 56 points in front to the Dees, 44. It's counting down to around 46 seconds now, Em. As a player out there, just how tough is this when the ball is pinging around like that?
Oh, it's so tough. And credit to Melbourne, the way they were able to just, take the shackles off and just, throw everything at Geelong. I think obviously it took too long for them to finally do that. They waited to the last quarter, but they gave themselves so many opportunities. So you do take a lot from that, knowing that you can come close in games.
Yeah, it was really, really frenetic. We thought we've never had an AFLW final go to extra time. This is arguably the closest we've got. We're still pinging away here. Lauren Pearce is nearly the hero of the day with this shot coming up after the ball up. And then the Cats just had to hang on for dear life. They had a clip on their website after the game, Geelong, Chantal Emerson talking to Coach Dan Lowther, and she said that her kick in here that she's just about to take was her worst kick of the day, but she was so relieved that they managed to hold on for the biggest win in the club's history.
And it's such high stakes. And Nina Morrison, fantastic there with 29 disposals, but she wasn't out there for that final frenetic period, was she?
No, she wasn't. Nina was absolutely outstanding for the entirety of the game. She just seemed to have an extra second whenever it counted. When the game's on the line, I'm sure you want your best midfielders in that centre bounce.
You absolutely do. So it was a big call by Dan to let his younger midfield brigade go to work, but they will learn a lot from that Geelong. They did escape, obviously, a near miss there, and I think when they look at some of the footage, they lose their balance at times. They come in and they let the Melbourne midfield sort of get on the outer, so they'll review that quite heavily and make sure it doesn't happen again. But they definitely could have. Melbourne could have snuck that win, definitely.
So Geelong's head coach Dan Lowther was on credit to the girls, and he let us in on just why Nina Morrison stayed on the bench.
Nina Morrison interviewed post-match and she said she was stuck on the bench in the final minutes. So I'm sure that was less than ideal to have you probably the best player on the ground for the game stuck on the bench in the final few minutes. Pretty hairy sort of situation.
Yeah, it was, considering they were piling the goals on and the centre bounces were coming pretty thick and fast. Nina's just had a bit of a cramp, so she was getting some work done on her leg. And I asked the question, are you good to go? And it's like, well, by the time she got bounced up and around the ground, there wouldn't have been much time for us to make that change anyway. So we looked at our midfield that was in there with Darcy and Renee playing that role, and we thought, no, you know what? This is a good opportunity for Darcy to feel that energy and that the moment that was hers to take, and we won, which was the main thing. It's not ideal to not have your strongest starting lineup. It's certainly a good opportunity for younger ones to experience that.
Talk about rolling the dice, but it paid off for Dan Lowther and his Cats. Now, of course, last week down at the Catteries there, it was a Prasparkas off with Maddie coming up against Georgie. But this week, Em and Sarah, Maddie was at home watching those final scenes. Let's just take a look, because she is going nuts.
She is riding every single kick there, every mark. Lauren Pearce's rush shot at goal. All allegiances have gone out the window here. We know that she's a bomber through and through. We know that she loves Essendon, but sometimes, that sibling bond is a little bit stronger.
I think that was the whole competition, though, because at the end of the day, you want to see new teams progressing in finals. So I think everyone was Maddie there going for Geelong on the weekend.
Except for the Melbourne fans.
Except for the Melbourne fans.
Well, let's get to Melbourne now, Sarah. What went wrong? Because they came home with a flurry of goals, but for the first 3 quarters, it was like, what are you girls doing?
Yeah, they were really beaten up around the ball. It was something that, speaking to Dan, on credit to the girls, I'll sneak in another plug.
Nice.
He said that he really put the acid on his midfielders that, to really stand up, that this was the occasion. They had to win. They had to provide a lot of leadership around that midfield in order to win the game. So Melbourne's midfield are quite slight. They've been playing Maddie Gay in defence. She's an option to play through the midfield if they want a bigger body. But they've sort of got Tyler Hanks, Liv Purcell, who are Lily Mithen as well. They're smaller bodies. And Geelong, who themselves have been bullied around the ball at times this season, they turned the tables there and really took control of the game.
If you're sitting back and watching that as a Melbourne player, Em, and you're just frustrated and asking, why didn't we get going a little earlier? Because we saw in the final term, Mixton, he did flip the magnets a little bit, but once they got their game going, they're bloody hard to beat, aren't they?
No, it does make you wonder. I think when you're vying for back-to-back premierships, you wonder why it takes so long for them to really get that energy going within the group. So it would be really disappointing, but credit to Geelong. They really outplayed Melbourne at their own game style. The way they chained out of congestion, the way they really possessed the footy, that's exactly what Melbourne do. And you could see Melbourne got so frustrated because they couldn't get their hands on the footy because just Geelong had it for the first 3 quarters. So credit to Geelong.
And for the last couple of weeks, Sarah, we've been talking about Melbourne going from this scoring juggernaut to not being able to score at all. But if we dig a little deeper, we can see they were just that from rounds 1 to 5. But really, the form slump, it begins in round 6, perhaps not a few weeks ago. This malaise started in the middle of the season.
Some of it is to do with the fixture breakdown. Of course, 10 rounds of the season, it's an uneven bounce sometimes. So the Dees had a softer start to the year, and then in round 6 they played Adelaide. And that was where it all started to unravel a little bit. They had games against Brisbane at round 10, North Melbourne as well, who they beat fairly comfortably. But those stats are pretty stark. They didn't score as much and they were conceding more. So all over the ground, things weren't working for them.
So Geelong will travel up north to take on Brisbane in the first preliminary final. Em, this is your former team. So we're going to hand the reins over to you, and you want to highlight the Sparks sisters, starting with Kathy, and just her ability to break the lines and win through the stoppages and how important she will be.
Yeah, I think just the power and speed of both Sparks sisters. So as you see with Kathy, again, in this Adelaide game, the ball's bobbling around in congestion, and she was the one that could really break lines and take the game forward. So I think in finals footy, the ability to break away like you see here, it makes the opposition defenders make a decision. Do you come up and defend Kathy? Do you stay back and stay on your player? So it just asks questions of opposition defenders, and that's exactly what you need in finals.
And it's what makes Kathy Sparks such a dangerous prospect, Em, because we know how good she is as a tagger. And, you know, Geelong have Morrison, McDonald, Press-Parkers. She could conceivably go to either of them. But, you know, they may have to watch her defensively.
Oh, that's it. And that's what makes Kathy so hard to match up on, because defensively she'll take something away from you with her body work at stoppage, but she'll go the other way and she'll make you chase her.
Well, from one Spark to another, let's talk about Ruby, the ultimate role player, a small forward, a pressure forward, and they are worth their weight in gold in finals, aren't they?
They certainly are. I think Ruby's role is really understated. She only plays limited game minutes, but as you'll see, she comes from out of screen on so many instances to just impact, you know, the play that's going on. I think with Geelong, the way they want to generate run from the halfback with Emerson, with Becky Webster, I think if Ruby Spark and Courtney Hodder are sniffing around, chasing you down, it's not going to be able to create that rebound that they want. So I think in finals footy, having a player like that is lethal.
And of course, they haven't played these two sides since season 6, and that's going to be 666 days between drinks, or I should say games. And Em, you said off air, that's the devil's number, so we could be in for some kind of hellish performance.
I know, there's something in that. We'll see, have to wait and see.
And that one will be on Saturday night at 7:45. Of course, there was another semi-final at the weekend. Perhaps not as close, but perhaps the result we expected. Adelaide far too good for the Sydney Swans, and really it just showed the difference between an inaugural team and a team in their second season, didn't it?
Yeah, so season 2 for the Swans and season 8 for Adelaide, and you know those pre-seasons have a cumulative effect, Em, which I'm sure you'll all agree with. Adelaide were just a little bit deeper across the field. So, you know, Laura Gardner couldn't get her hands on the footy because she was competing with Eb Marinoff and Anne Hatchard. They're just a little bit behind in terms of their development, which is completely understandable. What was interesting was that Scott Gowan said post-match that the Swans' kilometres, their GPS and their pressure ratings were exactly where they wanted them to be. So, you know, it came down to skill and performance, but there's no questioning their effort.
Well, from one coach to another, this was Crows coach Matthew Clark with high praise for his girls.
Yeah, no, it was a really strong performance, obviously. I thought it was still a pretty good game, and the pressure from Sydney was at a really high level. So, but yeah, our ability to, it's probably, to be honest, our first four-quarter performance of the year. Bizarrely, we've sort of been a little bit patchy, but that was pretty complete.
It's a little bit scary, our first four-quarter performance for the years. I'm not sure that's what the other three teams would be wanting to hear from Matthew Clark. Now, Emma, we're going to get you up to the wall for Gemma with the deep dive. And as you're doing that, Sarah, let's get to our star power for NAB. And it's a crow that seems to stand up on the big stage, the big occasions. Anne Hatchard, what a superb game at the weekend.
Yeah, when I was doing my match report over at Norwood Oval, I took approximately 0.1 of a second to decide on the best player for Adelaide. Hatchie was absolutely superb. She's had a quieter season. Her home and away season's been a little bit quieter compared to her lofty standards, but her finals performances are second to none. Where she really stands up is her endurance around the ground. She's a real four-quarter performer, and not many can keep up with her defensively for that time. But she's also such a strong marker. She's a taller midfielder. We forget how tall she is. Quite often when you see her in person, you're taken aback. And she uses that to her full advantage and is such a strong linking player all over the field.
Well, Gem and Em, that is one star mid, but Adelaide, they have plenty, and two, Gem, have a pretty special connection.
Yes, the Jess Allen-Danielle Ponter connection last week against the Swans, Emily, was damaging in Adelaide's midfield. We've got some examples of it, but can you tell us why that connection between ruck and mid is so valuable?
Yeah, it obviously is key. And the interesting part is that Ponta actually hasn't spent much time as a mid. So it's actually incredible how their connection has formed. But I think for me, it's all about timing and spacing. So Ponta being such a smart player, you can see she times her run onto the ball really well. But the other thing is just the amount of space that she was given from these Swans players. So I think if I'm North Melbourne, I'm definitely taking that space away from her and trying to shove her into the contest and then working from there.
Now, clearances aren't all equal, are they? Some clearances are more effective than others. Can you tell us why these ones are just so effective?
I think Danielle's ability to come out the front of a stoppage is so damaging. The way she drives her legs, and then she has such a good kick going inside 50. So I think that's much better than a pressure junk kick coming out. So you definitely want it in Ponta's hands.
Now, these are the midfield battle that we're going to see. We've obviously got a couple of rucks at the top here and then the quartet that generally run through the middle. Which midfield wins out?
Ooh, it's a close one, but I am going to go with the Roos. I think, obviously the Crows were so dominant last week, but I think Sydney Swans, their rucks were pretty, just not as dominant going against Jess Allen, who obviously had a day out. So I think for me, it's Kangaroos.
Jess Allen had a day out. We've got one quick highlight we want to show quickly before we finish it up. This was outstanding. She starts with the hit out, comes around, bides her time, knowing that her opposite ruck has actually gone in to lay the tackle. Neat gather, and what a kick inside.
Day out.
Day out. Jess Allen, she's one to watch, and Danielle Ponta in that linking midfield against North Melbourne this weekend.
One word for that Jess Allen play, yummy. Give me some more of that this weekend. Of course, that game is coming up on Sunday at Icon Park between the, I've just lost my train of thought, the Crows and the Roos. Thank you very much, Sarah. We don't need to look too far in the rear vision mirror, do we, to when they last played in round 9. This was a humdinger, and the Roos looked to have it on a silver plate. And just at the death, they lost a little bit of composure, didn't they? And the Crows, well, they put them to the sword.
Yeah, they led for the majority of this game. It was an absolute ripper for the season. And Adelaide had just scored late with 90 seconds to go to grab the lead. North Melbourne, most pleasingly, got it straight out of the middle and, you know, were peppering their inside 50, but the composure or the lack thereof on show, arguably a free kick there to Talia Randall, but, you know, that's done and dusted now, meant that Adelaide held on. So I've spent a day at North Melbourne last week behind the scenes.
Was it?
It was really interesting. But one thing that kept coming up time and time again was the game prior to this was against Melbourne, and that was the low point. After that, it was almost like a new resolution that we will not be beaten like this again. We are not an also-ran, we are a big four side. And they came so close in this Adelaide game, and apparently, you know, the players were quite upset, the Roos players, that they had coughed this up in the rooms after the game. So, you know, we'll wait and see what part 2 has to offer.
And where can we read about that?
On afl.com.au/AFLW.
Beautiful. I've got my train of thought back, and this game is at Icon Park on Sunday. The Roos and the Crows, we are looking forward to that one. Of course, the next time we meet on the W show, the W Awards, will have come and gone. We'll have a new All-Australian team, a best and fairest, and also a new rising star. But let's dig a little deeper into the best and fairest chat as we welcome back Em over there. All season, we have been pining for one player in Jazzy Garner to finally garner some attention with the umpires. Is it going to happen, Em?
Oh, it has to be this year, doesn't it? I think, she's just so consistent. Even how she won coaches' vote again this year. I'm sure she'll win players' vote as well through the AFLPA, but she's just so dominant. I really hope this is the year she finally takes it out.
The thing about Jazz, though, is that her teammates are so good.
I know.
So Ash Riddell has had arguably a career best season. She is I think she might be the leading disposal getter for the entire competition. And it means that she's getting a lot of the footy and she's right under the umpire's eyes. So whether that means that, you know, some of the threes that Jazz would normally get are going to go to Ash, I'm not sure. We're going to have to wait and see how that plays out.
And this is the coaches' votes all-time leaderboard. Jazzy now a multiple-time winner, and you can just see how dominant she is in the eyes of the coaches, and some pretty good company there as well with Mon Conti, Ebony Marinoff, Ali Blackburn and Kiara Bowers. So I'm wondering, guys, if it's not Jazzy Garner on Monday night, fingers crossed it is, who else could it be? I mean, there are so many talented players in the league.
Oh, there are. I think for me, obviously Ebony Marinoff's had an incredible season, but she's obviously got Anne Hatchard that's stealing votes off her along the way. So the ones for me is Mon. probably didn't get as many wins as they would have liked, and that would have helped her to get the award. But I think she stands out so much, just the way she moves, she catches your eye. So I think as an umpire, you are drawn to the way that Mon plays. And the other one for me is Ali. I think there was a few weeks in a row where she was just dominating. And once again, there's not many other sort of mids at Brisbane that are stealing the threes away from her. So I actually think the Smokies could be your Ali's, Ali Anderson and Moncontis.
I know Laura Gardner said the Swan polled really well in the Coaches Award. She came second behind Jazzy. Could she be a Smoky?
She definitely could, but you know, if we're talking teammates who have eye-catching performances, Chloe Malloy, I'm sure in the back half of the year will poll really well for Sydney. So Laura might be one to jump out to an early lead. I imagine Kate Hoare's going to poll really well, especially in that first month of footy, and Bonnie Toogood, the one for the forwards.
All right, just before I let you both go, a grand final prediction from both of you, Em.
North Melbourne versus Brisbane, and North will get the win.
I love it.
Ooh, I'm going Brisbane v Adelaide, and another flag for Brisbane. They love being the underdogs.
It's the Taylor's oldest time, isn't it? Brisbane and Adelaide. We're always talking about them. Sarah, thank you for your time. Em, you're off to Byron Bay tomorrow to be a toolie, so have fun.
Thanks for reminding me.
And thanks for joining us on The W Show. Thanks to NAB. 2 epic prelims coming your way this weekend.